Aloha, namaste, and welcome to the Tuesday night yoga wisdom of the Bhagavad Gita class. My name is Janapati Das, and thank you very much for coming tonight and sharing yoga wisdom with me. We are going to, like every second Tuesday of the month, we're going to read some verses from the Bhagavad Gita as it is, as translated by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. So please accept my respects, and let me offer my respectful obeisances to my spiritual teacher, Jagat Guru, Siddha Swarupananda Paramahamsa, Srila Prabhupada, and my grandfather's spiritual master, the spiritual master of my spiritual master, who so kindly translated this Bhagavad Gita as it is and purported upon it, and also just the fact that he came from his comfortable and humble abode in India at an old age in his 70s, and endured a long trip on a boat and had a stroke and came into the dead of winter in the United States to bring us the science of Bhakti Yoga and bring us Krishna. So we're eternally grateful for what he's done for us, because I would not be here to teach you if it were not for him. So I accept my respects to him. And we will read some verses and talk about the class, but of course, first and foremost, we will engage in some kirtan, or hearing and chanting of Krishna's names, which as Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is the Supreme Lord himself, brought the kirtan, hearing and chanting of Krishna's names, as the prime benediction for humanity at large. And it is, as he says, the life of all transcendental knowledge. And we are going to talk about transcendental knowledge because the wisdom of the Bhagavad Gita is transcendental knowledge. And the hearing and chanting of Krishna's names is also transcendental knowledge. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. So we are going to engage in that right now, since it's so very important. And I will do a couple of mantras here. The first one is offering respects to my spiritual teacher. And the second one is offering respects to Lord Chaitanya and his associates. So once again, thank you for joining. And if you've just come in, we are doing a Bhagavad Gita yoga wisdom class. My name is Janapati Das, and we do these usually on the second Tuesday of the month. So if you like, you can go back in the Yoga Kirtan Hawaii, and there should be videos of previous classes. So what I'm going to do is maybe not talk so much in the beginning about Bhagavad Gita, but read from the Bhagavad Gita as it is. And we call it as it is because Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, seeing that there were many translations of Bhagavad Gita, could not quite recommend, before he translated it and purported upon it, a Bhagavad Gita that was written with the real spirit of the Bhagavad Gita. And the Bhagavad Gita, which means Song of God in English, is not just the Song of God, but it is also about the eternal loving relationship that the Supreme Lord, Sri Krishna, has with every living entity. So in the story, it is a conversation between Sri Krishna and Arjuna, the warrior prince. But it is also a conversation between the Supreme Lord and all of us, me and you, and all the living entities. And so it is a science. And so I'm going to read from just chapter 4, the beginning here, just to start our class. It starts from the beginning, chapter 4, verse 1. The Blessed Lord said, I instructed this imperishable science of yoga to the sun god Vivishwan, and Vivishwan instructed it to Manu, the father of mankind, and Manu in turn instructed it to Ishvaku. Verse 2. This supreme science was thus received through a chain of disciplic succession, and the saintly kings understood it in that way. But in course of time, the succession was broken, and therefore the science as it appears to be lost. Verse 3. That very ancient science of the relationship with the Supreme is today told by me to you because you are my devotee as well as my friend. Therefore you can understand the transcendental mystery of this science. So you can see that in these verses, a couple things are laid out here by Krishna to Arjuna. One is that the science of Bhakti Yoga, the science of the relationship, the loving relationship between the Supreme Lord and the living entity eternally, is a science. Now, as we've talked about in the past, about the nature as Krishna lays out also in chapter 2 to Arjuna, because Arjuna, as we remember, Arjuna was in a bind. He was in a dilemma of whether he should be fighting this war that they were about to take place in. So you can see that there's actually a battle there in a chariot and they're on doing battle here. So this Bhagavad Gita starts before the battle actually takes place, the battle of Kurukshetra. And Arjuna lays out all kinds of reasons why he thinks this is a bad idea and he should go off to the forest and just, skip on his duties to fight this war and just become a yogi in the forest, renunciate. And Krishna is explaining why that's a bad idea. So there is a conversation going on between Arjuna and Krishna, but there is also a conversation that's going on between Krishna and the living entity, all of us, because we certainly go through our life with one dilemma after another dilemma. And the major dilemma that we have here in the material world is that we're here, that we're living entities, and we've learned from chapter 2 that never was there a time when we did not exist. Now, how can that be? We've learned from this science of Bhakti Yoga, we've learned that this science teaches us that we are not our material body. We are not our material mind. We are not that. We are not these different kinds of bodies, man, woman, black, white, tall, short, fat, whatever it might be, Hindu, Muslim, Pakistani, American. These are all labels or designations that have to do with our body. And our false identification with our mind and with our body makes it so that there are so many dilemmas in our life, so many problems. We have a major problem. One is that we are seeking our happiness in this material world. We are trying to find our happiness in this material world. And we are going through this life, being born, living our life, maybe having situations happen like being married, having children, having parents, whatever it might be, a job. And then we come to the end of our life. We don't know when. It could be sooner, could be later. And then we're kicked out. We're kicked out of this body. And we have to take birth in another body based on the actions that we've engaged in, which is what we were talking about last chapter. We were reading from chapter 3. And so there's another living entity in dilemma of a cat's body. You can probably hear him. He wants to come in because he thinks he's a cat and he's going to come in. Sorry, that's Nitai. Sorry, Nitai. So yeah, there is this dilemma, and that we came into this chapter, last chapter, which we will read a little bit from, also chapter 3, which had to do with karma yoga. So Arjuna is continues to ask a series of questions. So what I was saying is that this is an imperishable science. And in science, the word science, if you look at the root words for science, like science and different kinds of words that come from Old French, Latin, there are different varieties of words that have come down to mean what we know as science. But the basic meaning behind science is truth, or knowing, or knowledge, or wisdom. The problem is that what we term as material science is not a real truth. It's mostly speculation, actually. It's mostly not based on any truth, but trying to attempt to understand things by measuring and experimenting in it. But this, when we talk about science, and we read about science in the chapter 4 here, what Krishna is explaining to Arjuna is that the real truth, the Vedic truth about our identity and our eternal relationship with Krishna, beyond this body, beyond the mind. And so Arjuna, he has a dilemma, but he's intelligent enough to format it in a question, okay? And we read about this last time, that the person who really wants to understand the truth will inquire and receive the information in a humble state of mind. He will receive that information from someone who knows the truth. In other words, if you want to have a perfect, as Bhaktivedanta Swami would say, we're imperfect. And our senses are imperfect, our minds are imperfect, and we base our material science on this imperfection, and then we expect people to prove something like the Vedic truth or the science of Bhakti Yoga by using an imperfect system, which is a real contradiction. You can't use a broken or an imperfect thing to try to describe something that's perfect. So we must go to the knowledge that we know is perfect and utilize that, and also to go to the person that is also perfect. Ultimately, in this case, it's Krishna. Krishna is acting as Arjuna's spiritual teacher, but he is also the Supreme Lord. And he also explains that this information, the science of Bhakti Yoga, has been handed down gently, handed down perfectly from Krishna to the next, who was Lord Brahma. And Lord Brahma received it perfectly and applied it perfectly and handed it down to his disciple, Narada Muni, or in the cases of here where Krishna also gave it to the sun god Vivishwan perfectly. The sun god Vivishwan perfectly received it, and he handed it down. And so it was also said here that this supreme science was received through a chain of disciplic succession, and the saintly kings understood it that way. So just like a perfect mango is handed down gently to the next person down below on the branch, they receive it gently, they take it, they give it down to the next person. So it's very important that this information is kept intact. If anything is changed or altered or whatever, I think it might be this, it might be that, and you go back to your speculating, then it's not a perfect mango anymore. And so this is the way that information is given. It was given to me by my spiritual master. I'm attempting to, and hopefully through the grace of my spiritual master, I'm giving it to you carefully. I'm not a perfect person by far, but my spiritual master is perfect, and I have perfect faith in him to try to take that information and give it to you. So we were reading then that Arjuna was asking more questions about the nature of why it wouldn't be better for him to go off and be a yogi, and Krishna was explaining that there were different ways to receive information, and also there was an ascending process, but you try to use your mind like they do in material science, but it's not a perfect situation. The best way is to humbly receive it from the spiritual master and consider it and apply it. And he was saying that it was not better for necessarily just to be a renunciate, and that it was that you have to act naturally. Everybody has to act, and that there is a lot of verses. What I want to do is I want to get to later in the chapter 3, but I would recommend reading the third chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. It's just packed full of information. It's very hard to try to encompass that within an hour class, but he was explaining a lot of reasons why it's better to engage in what is known as karma yoga. Karma, of course, when we back up a little bit to explain that, karma is action. In other words, activity or action. Okay? And what was known in the Vedic tradition was that the real karma was the pious results as laid down in the Vedic tradition. So it's not like if you do something bad, like murder somebody, that yes, you will get a karmic reaction, but in the truest sense, that was what was known as vikarma, or information or action that is forbidden in the Vedic scriptures. But for the sake of just keeping it compact and easily to understand, we'll just use the word karma. So karma is an activity, and the activities that you do in this spiritual world, either good or bad, will have a reaction naturally. What Krishna was explaining to Arjuna was that it was better to act in the service of Krishna, because ultimately, if you are engaging, if you're trying to restrain your senses of action and restrain your sense organs, but you still have the desires in your mind, and you go off and you try to be a renunciate, you're just a pretender. You're a showboat yogi. And this is really an unfortunate situation in a lot of ways. An atheistic person is actually much better than a showboat religionist, or a person that uses the religion to try to get sense gratification. And there are so many cases of that. And it's very unfortunate, because it makes a situation where more and more people don't want to follow any kind of religious path. They want to be atheists. They don't believe that God exists. And this is what's happening more and more in Kali Yuga, because of these pretenders, these people that have taken a good system and misapplied it in a way to be selfish. So Krishna basically explains that it's better to act in a situation, do your duty, fight in this war for me, for Krishna. He cites, you know, as Vishnu or Krishna. Do this for me, and without the attachment of what's going to come out of it. And just try to control your mind and your senses while engaging in these activities. And gradually you will be purified of your material desires or envy or desire to control, and the lust, which is what we're going to talk about here and read about. The lust meaning the self-centered and selfish desire to own and control. It is, from modern day understanding, a sexual desire, but in the larger sense, it means to want to own and control, which is basically the status of the conditioned living entity. We're conditioned, we think we're our body, we think we're our mind, and our goal is to just go for it, get what we can for ourselves or for our extended self, that is our family members, or even more so like our country, nationalism. So all these things come from this lust, or this desire to own and control, which is actually in truth a perverted reflection of a natural tendency to have a loving relationship with Krishna. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read this and I'm actually going to preface it by going back and reading something we read before, because the terminology of lust is brought up in the second chapter. We did read it before, but I'll read it again just to preface it. And this is from chapter 2, verse 62. While contemplating the objects of the senses, a person develops attachment for them. Wow. You're like, you wake up in the morning, you're like, God, I really want a coffee. Just like, got for coffee. We have 100 million people every day. I think it's 400 million cups of coffee are drank in America every day. They don't say it's a drug. So you're thinking, coffee, I need to have a coffee. So you get this attachment for it, and such attachment, lust, you really want to have that coffee and you want to enjoy it. And then, for whatever reason, maybe you get the coffee, maybe you don't get the coffee right away and you start to get angry. So this can be actually applied to everything. While contemplating the objects of the senses, a person develops attachment for them, and from such attachment, lust develops, and from lust, anger arises. From anger, delusion arises, and from delusion, bewilderment of memory. When memory is bewildered, intelligence is lost, and when intelligence is lost, one falls down again into the material pool. So we remember that I use the analogy of coffee, but this can be applied to anything across the board in the material world. So you just apply it, whether it's like, I gotta have that girl, I gotta have that boy. It ends up with, you talk about anger. I was just looking at a news thing of 2 5th grade girls who got in a fight, and one of the girls for some reason had a weapon and stabbed the other girl to death. I mean, it was shocking. But those kind of things happen all the time. You say, exactly, just while contemplating the objects of the senses. Something the girl said to her, maybe, or I don't know what the situation was, but you get attached to it. It gets in your head. And this is encouraged by our modern day social media, Twitter and Facebook and all these kinds of things, is that you go there, somebody says something you don't agree with, then you have to respond because it's in your head, and then they respond negatively to you, or they call you whatever, snowflake, or whatever they call you now, boomer, okay, boomer, or whatever. And then you get angry. So you can see these connections. It goes from one thing to another, and sometimes that anger will spill over to everything around you if you have a real bad anger problem. So I'm going to read then, where did it go? Oh, there it is. Okay. So Arjuna, later in chapter 3, we were talking about all these things, reasons that Krishna was saying, just do these things, do the karma yoga, do your activities in this world, but in a service, in an offering to Krishna, which is also brought up later in the Bhagavad Gita. All that you do, all that you eat, all that you offer, and whatever you do as an offering for me. That's what Krishna says to Arjuna. So this is a very similar thing. It is a thing. You offer, you're fighting in this war for me, because that's part of the reason. For the living entity, it can be anything else. Do whatever you're going to be doing in the service of me. You don't need to be a renunciate. You don't need to be perfect. but you can go to the perfect person. You can go to the perfect system of transcendental knowledge and apply it and take from it. And the transcendental knowledge is, as Lord Chaitanya also says, it is like an ocean of transcendental bliss. And the ocean is said to not even have boundaries. So the ocean of knowledge, real knowledge, transcendental spiritual knowledge about your existence and your relationship with Krishna is boundless. So you can go to that. You can take shelter in that. That's something that's real, it's tangible, and it's transcendental knowledge. It's not speculative, it's not imperfect, as many other kinds of knowledges in the material world are. So Arjuna, again, he brings up this question because he's saying, okay, Krishna is saying, what great men do earlier in the chapter, the common men will follow. So if you're going to go off to the forest and pretend like you're a yogi, and maybe you're not ready to do that because you're a kshatriya, you're a teacher, you're a warrior, and this is the stage of life you're in, you're not ready to be a yogi yet, you go off, then many people are going to think, well, I should go off and do the same thing. And then because they have so much desires in their mind still, that they will not be able to handle it. They'll be in a religious position like these religious leaders and be able to just fool people, but ultimately they're not making, their words that they come out have no impact on you, except for fools who want to be fooled. And when they find out, and I was just thinking about this happens so many times with so-called gurus in the world. I was reading about this, watching a video about a guy in, I don't know, Kazakhstan or some place in East Europe, who was a security guard guy who hit his head or something, and then he supposedly had a religious experience and realized, oh, Jesus is talking to me, and so he starts his own ashram of things, and so he's saying, and then he says he is Jesus, he's an incarnation of Jesus, and so there are people who fall for it. But then I realized, I watched this video before, and I thought, oh, this guy, he's going to probably go down in about 5 years, because that's usually what happened to these guys who are pretenders. And sure enough, I saw in the news, this guy got arrested for psychologically and sexually abusing his so-called disciples, and he's now being prosecuted. So just goes to show. So, and this, Arjuna is asking these questions, and Krishna is very clearly explaining these things. And of course, Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, being in a disciplic lineage and a perfect spiritual master, because his spiritual master was perfect and handed it down, and he received it perfectly, and my spiritual master received it perfectly from him, and he handed it down to all of us perfectly. It is wonderful. So here in text 36, we were talking about lust, right? This desire, burning desire to control, right? To control and enjoy. And he says, Arjuna said, O descendant of Vrishni, by what is one impelled to sinful acts, even unwillingly, as if engaged by force? So this word impelled, of course, means to be sucked in, right? To be sucked in to the sinful activities, the vikarma, the activities that are lustful, which is what Krishna brings up in the next chapter. The Blessed Lord said, "It is lust only, Arjuna, which is born of contact with the material modes of passion and later transformed into wrath." There's that anger that we were reading about before, and which is the all-devouring sinful enemy of this world. There's no greater enemy than this thing that's keeping you between. It's like a cloud between you and Krishna, the living entity in Krishna. This loving relationship, this song of God cannot really be understood, or cannot come back to Krishna because of this lust. So I'll read on, because it's just all really wonderful. As fire is covered by smoke, as mirror is covered by dust, or as the embryo is covered by the womb, similarly the living entity is covered by different degrees of this lust. Thus, a man's pure consciousness is covered by his eternal enemy in the form of lust, which is never satisfied and which burns like fire. So it's a very important point, because in that prayer by Lord Chaitanya, it cites that this transcendental knowledge it's the life of all transcendental knowledge, the hearing or chanting of Krishna's name, which is non-different than receiving information, transcendental information from the Bhagavad Gita. It is the same thing. It's reawakening our love for Krishna, which is eternal and ever existing, but which is covered over by this lust and this desire to control. And Lord Chaitanya says that the hearing and chanting is like a cooling moon. It's like it extinguishes the fire of conditional life. Conditional life is living in this life of lust, of this is me, I am this person, I want to own and control the things around me. And that kind of attitude is not just selfish, it's also dangerous to the world, the people around you. And you wonder, why is it that people are always asking, why is it that there's so many problems in the world? It never seems to resolve. We have this problem, and then we think we resolve it by applying some kind of law, or saying, that's bad, or trying to cancel people because they, it's like whatever they try to do externally through a law or anything like that never really works, because they don't really get to the root of the problem. The root of the problem is that we have this form of lust. We have this desire to own and control. We are encouraged by our modern society to engage in hedonistic lifestyle. And then we wonder, why do we have environmental problems? Why do we have racism? It all comes down to this very simple concept that we are not our material body and our mind. We will never, ever find any kind of happiness or satisfaction. Maybe some material happiness initially in some cases, but no lasting satisfaction or happiness. And then we go through this life, as it said, the embodied soul continually passes through this life from boyhood to youth to old age. Similarly passes into another body at the time of death. So without that understanding, we just think, oh, this is it, or there are different degrees of way we thinking. We have like the atheistic way of thinking. I'm here, and this is my life, and I'm going to get what I want. Or another degree of that is like, okay, maybe I'm atheistic. I don't believe in God. I don't believe in an afterlife. We're just here by accident, but I live morally. Then there may be another degree of like maybe the religious person who's like, yeah, I'm here. I'm my body. I'm my mind. God created this earth for my pleasure, and if I'm good enough, then I will go to a heavenly place where I will enjoy some more. So beyond that is this true spiritual essence. We are eternal spirit souls. We are not the material body. We are not our material mind, but we are the dominated part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. And we have an eternal relationship of love with the Supreme Lord, but we have chosen, that's the key, we have chosen to forget it and to try to be the owner and controller of this world. And it just is madness, because when you come into a human, and we go through all kinds of different bodies, it's not just human, it will be the ant, the worm, there are 8,400,000 species of life that we can go through, what we've probably been through. We just go, we have parents, we have a relationship with our parents, we have friends, we get married to somebody, we have children, and then at the time of death we leave them all behind like sticks in a pond that floats away. We go in, we have another set of parents, we have, maybe bird parents or whatever, and then we have some mate, and this is how we go. But when we come to a human form of life, it's a very, very special form to be in, because we will eat, mate, eat, sleep, mate, and defend like most animals, but we also have one capability that animals don't have, and that's to inquire, to philosophically ask why. Why am I here? Why should I do this? But as Bhaktivedanta Swami says, that most people in human bodies are acting like polished animals, because they don't take on that fifth. They don't inquire. They just live for the day, live to eat and be merry or whatever, and without even realizing that the ship's going down. It's going to go down. You don't know when it's going to go down. It's like they said that the people on the Titanic, the orchestra was still playing while the ship was sinking. That's like, and there were people up there still partying. It's like, you're about to sink. And so that's a very important point, is that we should not waste our precious human form of life, but we should take the opportunity to cultivate that understanding, to even though we're imperfect, we go to the perfect person, we go to the perfect source, and apply that in our life, and our life can become perfect. And at the time that our body falls apart, or we get hit by a car or whatever, we are ready. We're ready for that. That's a very serious thing to do, because most people don't. And when they come to that time of death, they are scared. I would say, S-less, but I guess I'm not supposed to swear on here, but they are scared. They're really, really scared. My grandmother was like that. She was an atheist her whole life, and she got to the point when she was like, is there more? She finally had that realization that she had wasted her life. And she wanted to know, but was there more? So I'm going to read a little bit more of this, and then we're going to chant some, because we're running out of time. The Bhagavad Gita, as it is so wonderful that you should take the time every day to just even take one verse and read some of the purport and contemplate it and apply it in your life. It is the most perfect knowledge, and not just only perfect because it's succinct, but it's the ocean of no boundaries. In other words, once you read it, you can continually read it, and it will always be new, and it will always be fresh. So we read this: the man's pure consciousness is covered by his eternal enemy in the form of lust. It's really your eternal enemy. If this lust could keep you here perpetually, just like not realizing your true happiness, like wandering around in the desert and not realizing that you have an oasis right there. You're like, I'm thirsty, but there's a pretty looking mirage out there. I'll wander out there. And that's how material life is. You just, like, we wander through the desert looking for mirage after mirage, just walking by the oasis, which is this beautiful transcendental knowledge. The senses, the mind, and the intelligence are sitting places of this lust, which veils the real knowledge of the living entity and bewilders him. Yeah. So the lust is present within all of the senses, the mind, and it's very hard to try to just restrain things. That's what Krishna was telling Arjuna. It's like if you are trying to even restrain it from your senses, but it's still sitting in your mind, then you are a pretender to say that, oh, I'm a renunciate because I don't do these things with my senses. But in your mind, you're thinking about it. It could be any time, any situation. People have fallen down even when they've been supposedly celibate or whatever, and something happens, some beautiful disciple comes to them, and they're attracted to the guru, so-called guru, and then before you know it, the guru is having sex with his disciples and things like that. And so there's so many of these so-called gurus out there, and like the guy I was talking about, he was abusing people, and so Krishna tells Arjuna, therefore, Arjuna, best of the Bharats, in the very beginning curb this great symbol of sin, lust, by regulating the senses, and slay this destroyer of knowledge and self-realization. And, wow, there's a couple more verses out there. Maybe we'll get to it. It's just like we're running out of time. So I really want to read a little bit of Bhaktivedanta's purports because it's so wonderful. They're so wonderful. Here it says, the Lord advised Arjuna to regulate the senses from the very beginning so that he could curb the greatest sinful enemy, lust, which destroys the urge for self-realization and specifically knowledge of the self. This is a thing that it's good to engage in early on. Because if you keep cultivating things, it gets harder and harder and harder. If you cultivate, it's like, you put fire. I know these people these friends of mine who are doing that. They just like play with fire, right? They just pour some fire and then they put it out, and then it just the field. They burn down like a quarter acre of field because they got this fire out of control and they couldn't put it out. And this is what it's like to engage in this lustful activity, is that you just keep engaging and engaging and engaging in it, and just you satisfy it a little bit. They said that it's kind of like pouring gasoline on the fire. Initially, it'll go down because it's liquid, but then it'll just like, or they put some kind of leaves on top, and it smothers it just initially. So you engage in something, it's like, oh, okay, but then it's like it burns more. And it just gets worse and worse. So it's better to try to curb it by engaging in the activities, by offering your service, by offering the things that you do in your life as an offering to Krishna. And then we engage in the activities like the hearing and chanting Krishna's names. We read the Bhagavad Gita. We listen to the saintly people or the saintly spiritual masters in a disciplic lineage. We listen to their words. We apply them into our words. We try to control the senses as best as we can, but we realize we're not perfect, and we're not always. It's not a situation where if you don't do it perfectly the first time, you're doomed to hell or something. It's actually a practice. You have to practice it daily, and as you practice, the most important thing, of course, is the hearing and chanting of Krishna's names. If you can practice those every day, regulation, just practicing them every day, hearing and chanting, remembering, you will get a taste for those things. And then you are trying to control those other things, but it becomes easier and easier to control those things if you practice the hearing and chanting of Krishna's names. Let me read a little bit more and then we'll chant some. Jnanam refers to knowledge of self as distinguished from non-self, or in other words, knowledge that the spirit soul is not the body. Vijnanam refers to specific knowledge of the spirit soul and knowledge of one's constitutional position and his relationship to the Supreme Soul. It is explained in the Srimad Bhagavatam, the knowledge of the self and the Supreme Self is very confidential and mysterious, being veiled by Maya. Maya is this covering, material covering. But such knowledge and specific realization can be understood if it is explained by the Lord himself. Bhagavad Gita gives us that knowledge, specifically the knowledge of the self. The living entities are parts and parcels of the Lord, and therefore they are simply meant to serve the Lord. This consciousness is called Krishna consciousness. So from the very beginning of life, one has to learn this Krishna consciousness, and thereby one may become fully Krishna conscious and act accordingly. So it's good to start early as possible. I mean, I was fortunately, but unfortunately, I think I was, like in my 30s when I started chanting. But you can take, it's all about how serious you are with that. How much you apply it. If you take so much time to do your hair or make your body look good, or you brush your teeth, or you make your teeth look really good, or you eat well, you can take time every day. And the goal is to, if you apply it nicely, even in a small amount, hearing and chanting of Krishna's names, you'll find that it's very attractive. I want to do it more. And you find out more things that you can do. And then before you know it, your whole life is service. It's like, it's a meditation. Your life is a meditation. You're cultivating this, recultivating this relationship with Krishna. And you find more and more that it is much more attractive than just trying to be a hedonist and trying to engage in just trying to find pleasure for yourself. You can engage in the same kind of things, going to work, having children, having family, and you apply it all as a meditation in the service of Krishna. So let's do some more hearing and chanting of Krishna's names, and thank you very much. Thank you very much. That's all for tonight. We'll see you next time. Have a nice night. Namaste.